Yes, let's do it.
Let's
Money.
do
Yeah,
it.
it's a sexy topic that is never talked about. So this is great.
Totally. I love it. And it's something that I think the more we talk about, the more sexy it becomes and the less sort of like icky and scary and like taboo. So let's do it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, feel free to share a little bit about who you are, what your business is, and how you got to this place of getting to talk about money for your job.
Ah, yes. Money. It's so funny. I think like a few years ago, if someone would have told me that I would be in the finance world, I don't think I would have laughed. I think I would have like seriously been offended. Like I'm not some nerd that's just going to look at Excel sheets all day. Like I'm not an accountant. I don't want to be a banker. Like I'm not a boring person. Okay, there's much more to life than money and
No
numbers. I
offense,
would never
bakers.
do finance. Here I am, and I absolutely love personal finance way more than I thought I would. But it didn't always start that way. So money was extremely stressful growing up. My parents would argue about money. I remember they were just like, no matter how much we saved, there was never any money for anything. And I like it clicked one day when I realized like money is the thing holding us back from living like the life that we dream of. And then out of high school, I realized this isn't just my family struggling financially. Like all these people that I thought were doing really well because they have nice houses, nice cars, all the fancy clothing, it turns out they're extremely financially stressed because they have no plan. So that's when I first got into personal finance. And it started as just like one on one coaching with people, creating like personalized spending plans and improving their money mindset, talking to their spouse about money. And since then, it's kind of morphed into like all things personal finance and life related. So people are always saying, like, why didn't we learn this in school? I wish they taught us this in college. Like, okay, let's get it on the college campuses. Let's go. Like, your employees
Yeah.
keep asking for pay raises. Like, let's help them make the most of it. So, doing workshops for companies. Um, yeah. So, all things personal finance and just, I love helping people create a world where money isn't the thing holding them back.
Beautiful. I love this so much. And it's a topic near and dear to my heart because I've as entrepreneurs, money means something a little different than it means to somebody who gets a paycheck regularly. And so like the idea of money mindset becomes that much more powerful and almost like vital to being able to run a business that provides for you in all the other ways of life. So I'm really, really looking forward to this. And I would love to just dive in right away and just ask like what are some sort of not red flags, but like when you talk to people about money mindset or about the struggles that they've had with money or even their goals, what are some things, some strategies that you share with them right off the bat? And what are some things that you would advise people maybe to avoid when it comes to how we perceive or think about money?
Oh, yeah. There are so many patterns. It's kind of fascinating. So, um, people often think that when they meet with a money coach, like we're going to sit down and I'm going to tell them never eat out, move to a smaller house, move to a cheaper part of town, like cancel your phone line. I don't know. They think I'm just going to come in and tell them like stop spending money. And that is not it at all. I'm naturally a spender and there's a way that you can do it. There's a way that you can spend money, like be a free spirited individual, enjoy spontaneous like adventures, and save for your future and be investing. So, one of my favorite things is to just help people spend intentionally. So,
Mm,
Pua, you spend money on what's important to you. I'm going to spend money on what's important to me. I won't judge you. You don't judge me. Okay. You
I
can go and
love
spend
that.
like hundreds of dollars on dog sweaters and I'm gonna go spend hundreds of dollars on like skydiving or something dumb, and there's no judgment in that because it lines up with like our values or what's important to us. So I think people always think, like I ran into one of my clients at Starbucks the other day, and she was like expecting me to shun her for going to Starbucks because people are always like, if you spend $8 a day at Starbucks, like if you took that money and invested it, like stop eating or stop drinking Starbucks, do better things with your money. And I was like, I'm at Starbucks also. Like, $8 isn't going to make you go bankrupt. Like, enjoy your Starbucks, enjoy your manicures, enjoy the fancy things that you enjoy, and do it intentionally.
That's beautiful. There's so much judgment around how we spend our money and our resources. And I always think like, why is there so much more why are we so much more critical about where we spend our money than where we spend our time? Even though we can make more money, we can't make more time, but that is so much more like frivolously wasted. So, just a shower thought for today.
Yeah, it is so true. Right. And it's also kind of interesting. Like I see incomes like on both ends of the spectrum. I've worked with people that make like $2,000 a month and people that make $20,000 a month. And both of them are financially stressed. Like, so oftentimes it's not an income issue, it's more of like an intentionality issue and a where the hell is my money going issue. So, yeah, it's interesting to see those patterns.
Yeah. And what I guess you shared a little bit about this already, but let's dive into more of like what the source of that stress is. And you did mention sort of intentionality and planning and sort of what that might look like as somebody who has experienced your coaching. Don't give us all your secrets, but I'd love to have, just some quick tips for our audience.
Yeah, certainly. So, the one of the questions I always ask people is like, what do you want to leave this session with? And it's almost always like clarity. Like, I want to know, how am I doing? What do I do next? They're really looking for like a step-by-step money plan. So the first step with that is create a vision. Like, what are we even working towards? What is your goal? What do you want your life to look like 1 year from now? Everything else factors in, like that decision is a factor for all the other decisions. So our first step is always like, what do you want your life to look like from 1 year from now? You want to be traveling more. You want to be home with your kids more. You want to be quitting your job and leaving that toxic environment. After we have that, the other places or the other steps can fall into place. So after you have a vision, we work on a practical money step of saving $1,000, which it seems like so like basic, yet more than like 50% of us don't have it. Most people don't have that tiny little cushion in their checking or savings account. And that's just a little cushion between like us and reality. $1,000 is obviously not like a full emergency fund, but it's a starter. It'll get you there. It's a starter to get us on to the next steps. So after you have a little starter emergency fund and you know what you're even working towards, what your goal is, then it's time to focus on the debt. And debt isn't a really interesting topic. There's like some financial gurus that are like, avoid debt. Like, if you have any debt, like, live on rice and beans and don't travel and just like get rid of your debt. And it is totally a personal opinion. Like, personal finance is personal. So what we often do with clients is we'll make a debt payoff plan, which can often be extremely eye-opening to people. They've never seen all their debts in one place. They've never figured out their interest rates and like the thousands of dollars it's costing them in interest. After we lay it all out there, we run some different scenarios as to which debt it makes sense to pay off first. Usually it's something like the credit cards, but sometimes there's an emotional piece to it. So, like, if someone has a personal loan that has their divorce fees on it, or like lawyer fees from a lawsuit, or someone lost a loved one and it has like funeral expenses on it, those types of things, we take those emotional things into consideration too. So that's where I think,
Mm.
like in the finance world, so many people get caught up in like the numbers, but also like we're humans. It's behavioral things too. It's emotional. So there's more than one way to pay off debt. After we figure out a debt payoff plan, that's where we like start to build up the emergency fund, and then we can start getting you invested. And then we start funding what I call like our YOLO goals. Like, what are those crazy things in life that you want to be doing? You want to like go spend 2 months in Europe? You want to uh, pet a penguin in Antarctica? Like, let's start saving for those crazy goals that seemed really unrealistic a year ago. So after we get people to the place where they now have an emergency fund, they got a clear plan to pay off their debt, they are investing for their retirement, they're saving for their YOLO goals, then money becomes even more fun, and they can start living a life of generosity. So they're pretty much building wealth at this point. And now they get to just like go to local coffee shops, order like one latte, and then just sneak the waitress like $100 tip and run out the door. Like that's they're like that's when money gets so fun. People have like no clue what they're missing out on when they're in those first few steps. Like, you think getting a manicure is fun? Wait till you like surprise someone who's struggling with a huge tip, or like an Uber driver, and it like is the highlight of their year. It's the highlight of your month. It's just one of the coolest experiences. That's a quick overview of like a money journey for people.
Oh my gosh, you're like my new favorite person. There is so much there. Like, first of all, thank you for laying this all out, because there are parts of people's money journeys that feel very exciting and, one day I'll get there. And then there's the parts of like the debt payoff that I love that you so beautifully identified, that not all debt is equal and not all sources of debt are equal, just because on paper it makes more sense to pay off like a high interest credit card. But never once have I ever considered that there are strings attached to all of our debts, and some of those strings are much more emotionally charged. And every time we see that debt, we're reminded of that feeling. And I don't think any debt really like feels like super awesome, but some probably could like take us into a spiral, and that's so genius. I've never heard that before. And you don't really get that advice unless you work with a coach who is there to support your human experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
emotional side of money, like personal finance, like it has so little to do with numbers. It's kind of ridiculous. So much of it is behavioral and emotional. And if it was as easy as just like spending less money than we make, like then everyone would be wealthy. And like obviously there's more to it, because so many of Americans are like struggling to pay rent right now, and like a dozen of eggs is expensive. Yeah, people I think often overlook the emotional side of it, including with that.
For sure. Yeah. It's kind of like fitness, right? Like calories in, calories out. It makes sense to everybody. But
Right.
there's a reason why the fitness industry is so massive, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they have
Yeah.
so many parallels. The fitness and finance worlds are so similar. And it comes down to a lot of habits. Like let's build some good health habits, and let's build some good like finance or like wealth habits. Wealth and health habits. There you go.
Yeah, I love it. I want to go back to a couple things that you said before, but while we're on the subject, what are some really solid sort of daily or regular habits that people can create around their money?
Yeah, having an intentional money plan. So that typically looks like a spending plan. Some people call it a budget. I tend to avoid the word budget because it has like that like diet sort of vibe to it, just like a negative connotation. But an intentional spending plan just gives you the freedom to spend money on the things that are important to you. So I'll give you an example. Like my husband and I combined our finances, and he likes surfing. He has like 7 surfboards. And I'm like, why would you ever want another surfboard? But in our spending plan, we set aside money, like a couple $100s a month for Winton to spend whatever he wants to spend it on, a couple $100s for me to spend whatever I want to spend my money on. I'll go and like have dinner with friends or do little inter-island trips, those, and he will save his money up and then buy $1,000 surfboard. But the beautiful thing about it is that there's like no judgment, no shame, because that's his money, that's my money to spend guilt-free. So a practical money tip: spend money intentionally in the form of a budget or a spending plan. And while you do that, uh, plan for some fun things, plan for the things that are important to you, your values, and then also plan for things to not go as planned. Build in a buffer to whatever plan you're making, whether it's an investing plan, a debt payoff plan, a spending plan. Life doesn't go as planned. Yeah, that's probably
Totally.
the number one habit. And just being aware of your current money habits is a really good step in the right direction.
Yeah. And what do you have any like tools or tips on how people can start to create that awareness? Like if we're paralleling this to fitness, right? It's like writing down what you eat or logging your workouts. Is there something similar that you recommend?
Yeah, I think it really, just like everything else, it comes down to personal preference. But there are some really cool money apps. Some are a little more nerdy, where they might tell you things like your net worth, which is always a good thing to know. You can hook up all your bank accounts, and it like puts all your money in a clear picture, and it's like $10 to $20 per month. So some good options for that would be Mint Money, MINT. And another one is called YNAB. That's an app you can just download on your phone. And it stands for You Need a Budget. So YNAB. They make it fun. It's like entertaining and very simple, user friendly, meant for people that aren't really like number nerds and don't want to spend all day in an Excel sheet. And then there's some free versions of apps. A third one is Every Dollar. And you can just go in and like, you know, your paycheck's coming. Where do you want that money to go? You're deciding ahead of time your base expenses, and then also your goals, like that trip to Europe or a new car you want to be buying. So you can kind of map out the months ahead. So three good apps: Mint, Every Dollar, and YNAB. Good resources.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's awesome. We'll link to those in the show notes for sure. Um, I love I love that you have such an approachable approach around this. And it's almost one of those things where like people are like, I know I'm in a bad spot. I'll call you when like things are a little bit less shameful and like like let's talk when I've gotten some of my debt paid off, or and there's just a lot of shame around sharing where we're at. What would you say to someone like that who is really just looking for some support but they may not have awareness? They're like, I just swipe my credit card. I don't know what my bank account looks like. I don't know what my debt looks like, and I can't look at it.
Yeah, my advice would be show up. Like get some accountability, find an expert, and show up. So I start, like any new client, I start our coaching sessions with three spoken agreements, and one is just a note on confidentiality, and then the second note is a note on vulnerability. Like, money's a weird thing to talk about, whether you have a history with like gambling, or you just got like a huge inheritance and it's suddenly gone. Whatever it is, like, money's a weird thing to talk about. So just being open to being vulnerable about it, as cheesy as it sounds, but knowing that that coaching session is a safe space for it. And then the third note is a note on honesty, and just like throwing it out there, like, hey, if you're only making $200 a month, or if you're making $20,000 a month, like, let's just be honest and throw it out there. I just call it out right away, and then they're like, okay, I can admit, like, yeah, I just talked to a woman who got a huge inheritance, like millions and millions of dollars, which I do not see very often. Like, rarely do I meet with those people, but it's gone, like millions of dollars gone. So we talked about it, and we put together a plan. Like, she can't be living her life the way she was 4 years ago when she had that money coming in every month. But those things are hard to admit, and we have to kind of like put our ego to the side and be like, hey, I sincerely don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need help. I need someone to hold my hand. And that's what coaches are there for.
Totally. And I think that's so beautiful that you brought that out, because it like so I used to be in like the fitness space, and people used to come and say, well, I'm not in good enough shape to start working with you yet. It's like,
Yeah.
that's what we're here for. Like, we love to help you get to a place where you feel confident. And so anyway, when you shared that story, like I opened my mouth out of judgment and I was like, oh my God, it's gone. And yet if I really think about my own sort of habits and history, being a business owner means sometimes you get huge influxes of cash and then you have like it's like feast or famine all the time until you figure out sort of what that formula is for you and your business. And this is like my third business. And so coming out of a couple of businesses in the past that didn't financially pan out, and we were always in that sort of like, do we take a chance on this thing with the hope that it will solve our problems or bring in money or be the thing that fixes everything, right? And so there was a lot of like leaps of faith that required an investment that never really came back to us. So there's
Right.
like trauma around that, right? But on the other side, like you come out of that space and you're getting money and you're like, oh my gosh, now I can invest in that video editor that I don't need, but I want so badly. Or, and so like the money comes in and then it goes out. And it may not be in the form of millions of dollars, but it's still in the form of unpredictability and spending more than you're reliably bringing in. And I think that sort of habit or tendency might be more common than we think. And so instead of me being like, oh my God, this lady spent millions of dollars, I'm inclined to ask instead, let's talk about money mindset a little bit. And because I've also been in a place in the past where I was like, if I just write 10 times in a notebook, like, I'm going to make $10,000 this month, I'm going to make $10,000 this month, then it's going to happen. Like I've run the gamut. So let's talk about
Yeah.
like what money mindset strategies do you like to share and sort of anything actionable that our audience can practice?
Oh, yeah, I love that. So I wouldn't call myself like a money mindset expert. I have friends that are like very into like the manifestation and like the wealth building path through that avenue. And I was recently reading a book and she talked about this interaction with a wealthy person, where she noticed that this wealthy person like doesn't ever like talk about like her abundance mindset. I don't know. I guess I'm saying this in this book, this woman was just like she took the action to build the wealth. So I feel like sometimes people get so caught up in the money mindset. Like, yes, I've journaled so many things that never happened. And it turns out maybe my actions didn't quite line up with it. So I'm not a money mindset expert, but some practical tips. Um, One is to reflect on your history with money. So reflect on your past experiences with money. What was money like growing up? For me, I grew up in a pretty poor family. Like we were financially struggling always, like to just get food on the table. So I therefore always assume that people will never be able to charge or afford my prices because everyone's struggling financially in my eyes. So just realizing what money was like growing up and figuring out what truths about money are no longer true. What
Yeah.
childhood money truths are no longer true for you. And another one, I think, is just realizing that money's a tool. Like, it doesn't have to do with our self worth, it doesn't have to do with our like personal value or like, it's a tool, it's a number, it's like data, yeah, it's amoral. There's no similar to um, like a brick. You can use a brick to build a house or break someone's windows, right? And like rob their car, So money's a tool. And then reframing your money thoughts. The way we do think about money definitely impacts our reality. Um, I think it's one of the factors. So reframe your thoughts and don't forget to make your actions line up with it. Those are
Thank
some.
you for saying that.
Yeah. I also think celebrating the wins. People are so stuck in comparing, like, oh, like they did reach a 10-figure month and I didn't. But hey, if you started from nowhere and now you're making $2,000 a month with your side hustle, that's a huge win. Don't forget to celebrate it. So we're huge on celebrating the little victories, and it just helps us keep going one step at a time.
I love that. And so the part of that that really just made my heart sing. And again, like I am not pooping on anybody's money manifestation parade. I personally felt like, and maybe this was my interpretation at the time, the exercises around money mindset, like maybe I was looking for a quick fix, but I just did the exercises without the action. And there was nobody sort of like checking me on that. And so I was like, but I did the journaling, like where's the money? And my business partner and I at the time, we like really like sat down and we were like, and I remember there was one conversation in particular that now when I look back on it, I just can't stop laughing. So we actually started a podcast, which was the first thing that we did for our business. And the podcast was like, we had no audience. We were coworkers at a gym, and our audience were like the people in our classes that we were like, hey, we're going to start this podcast. And this was probably almost 10 years ago now. And all of the people that we followed, on their podcasts, they would have like their sponsor clips. And like, we heard that you can make money on podcasting. So we had this big plan to make millions with a podcast and to make it right away. And so we were like, we registered this business. We have a website, we have a podcast, but like, we're not making any money. So we're like, well, what are we selling? And we're like, there's nothing for sale. Okay, back to the drawing board. And it sounds silly, but like, I think when you're in that moment of like, it's all brand new and it's really exciting, and we're not, we didn't have a business plan. We had a podcast. We didn't think it would become a business, but it sort of like snowballed into one. And so there's all of these, it's like hopes and dreams. And I love hopes and dreams. I think there's so much value in that, especially and maybe only when paired with action. It doesn't have to be even the right action, but some action is necessary for that energy to be returned to you. So anyway, I love that you said that. And it's a funny story now that it's in the past, but back then we were like, what's going on?
That is so real. I feel like I see it all the time. And I feel like that was me until like last year. Like I was the queen of like journaling and like visualizing. And I'm like, okay, here's my like 6-month visualization. Like I can picture it. It's gonna happen. And then I was like, yeah, my actions. I look at my calendar and I'm like, oh, these two are not matching. Yeah. They're a really good team though. If you can get the action and the mindset, then I think, yeah, there's some serious momentum.
Yeah. And it's like part of our journey, right? Like there's the action feels especially, special and necessary once you've been in a place where like you see what happens when there's no action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Well, you are seriously like I could not love your approach more. And I feel like there are a lot of people out there who probably also feel like they might be in a good place. And they are, they're feeling good. Their bills are covered. Maybe they don't have that much debt or any debt, but they have goals and they might, maybe they're saving for something. They've got a savings account. What would you share with somebody who may not have considered working with a money coach, but might be open to the idea of working with a money coach to, create some extra tools or strategies or accountability? What opportunities are there for people who might just be looking for how they can maximize what they've already got going on?
I love this. I love that you asked that so much. So I feel like we always focus on the people that are like financially stressed, but we don't always realize that there's so much more to it than that. So like most of my clients have debt, don't have savings, and have no clue what they're doing. They're fighting with their spouse all the time. And then sometimes, and just recently I had someone fill out my form, and I looked at her results and I was like, why did she book a call? She's doing extremely well on paper. this woman has more savings than I do, which automatically makes me feel unqualified. she's she's making like triple what I make in a year. And but when it came to the question about money stress on like a scale of like 1 to 5, how stressed are you about money? She put that she was pretty stressed, even though she had tons of savings, was completely debt free. She was just planning on taking like a year off and going to Thailand. Like she's living the dream life. And I hopped on a call. I was just like, how are you like stressed? Like I don't get it. What's missing for you? Like it seems like you have everything. And her situation was she's got parents and family pressuring her to make these like huge investments. She's got her parents that are like, you need to be buying a house right now. Like you have a great income. She's got bosses that are like, you need to take this promotion because you're doing so well. And she just hopped on the call and she's like, do I have to do those like to be
Mhm.
financially like successful? And so for her, it was a conversation around money boundaries and how that fits into like the rest of her life. So we put together a plan for her to have the conversation. We like wrote out some scripts for her to have the conversation with her parents. It was like, hey, I know you guys want me to buy a house and you expect me to buy a house this year. I'm going to be doing that in 2 years because right now I'm not taking that promotion. I'm not buying that house. I'm going to Thailand. Like, peace out. Um,
Yes.
so even when people have savings, even when they're debt free, even when they have great income, they can still appreciate and find value in just like validating where they're at and their next steps.
That is so awesome. And I agree, like just because on paper somebody might be very financially stable, there's a lot of stress around. Like it's so I remember growing up, like I was in a very, blessed home. Me and my sister both went to private schools. Like my dad had a really, really stable, high paying job. And yet all of our decisions were made as if we had zero money.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that like, what is that about?
And you
Because
have those
that's bizarre.
memories.
Yeah, and that's how I see
Yeah.
money. Like I think money's always going to go away. I always want to like go the cheapest route, and it's not necessary, And I still to this day am sort of confused about like why we grew up like that and where that comes from and how I can let that go because it just doesn't it feels very limiting and it's just unnecessary, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot to work through. Like, I mean, same for me. I grew up like
Time for your
without
session.
money. I'm like, oh. Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually going through a training to become an accredited financial therapist and help people more so with like that side of it. It's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know where to start.
So odd. Don't worry, neither do I. But yeah, and I think that there's a lot of like, however your family handled money is those are the habits that we tend to inherit. And
Yeah.
we could be in a completely different situation, but still see money and treat money in the same way. Lots to
Yeah.
unpack.
I have a client, and both her parents worked in the stock market. They were like actively managing like like mutual funds and stuff. So it's interesting to hear her story because even though she grew up like in the stock market, like that was her life growing up, now she's on the opposite end and she's like, all she has are memories of her parents picking the stock market over her. Therefore, she's like completely zoned it out. And she's like, I want nothing to do with investing. I want nothing to do with all those graphs and green and red things. And like, all I remember are my parents picking that over me. So even people that grew up in like the finance world have a lot of traumas around money to process. It's a big thing.
Yeah. Man. So I'm like so interested in just everything that we've talked about. I've had to hold myself back from like continuing to ask a zillion questions so that we can get everything in this interview. So thank you for just sharing so openly. And the last time we chatted, we talked a little bit about a topic that you said was not necessarily part of your services, but we're willing to talk about it. And I would love to just sort of scratch the surface on this from the perspective of we are this complex human and our business, our life, our family, our finances, our happiness, our health, like all of it is very connected. And something that personally I get asked, I would say like at least 5 times a week, if not every single day, is about pricing for services and sort of what that process looks like. How do I price? How do I value my time, especially for coaches and service providers and people who may be trying to like assess their hourly value, which to me is bonkers. Like, how are we supposed to put our lifetime's worth of expertise and experiences and skills into this like finite hourly rate? It's just it's
Yeah.
mind-blowing to me. So anyway, can we just dig very briefly into that and just what are your thoughts around pricing and all of that?
I love it. This should be an entire different episode, honestly.
I know, right?
There's so much to talk about with pricing our services, especially entrepreneurs. Um One practical tip that I started doing because I was struggling with pricing my services was to provide different pricing levels, like having a simpler course or service that's like entry level, and then maybe you have your high ticket item. I feel like that's like a clear action step. No like mindset jargon is involved for those that are just like looking for a really simple step. There you go. Different levels. I think another important thing is to realize that whatever price, like, it doesn't matter what you charge. Money is not the issue. At the end of the day, money is really just a number, and people spend money on what they value. So I would not spend um, $10,000 on a car. I even have an older car than that. I spent like $5,000 on a car, but I easily spent $10,000 on a business coach. That was like a no-brainer to me because that's something that I value. So realize that people spend money on what they value. I have friends that won't spend $100 on a yoga membership, but they'll spend $100 on their dog in a heartbeat, right? Um, Spend money on what you value, and people will do the same thing. And when they value your course, your services and products, uh, it'll be a no-brainer for them. And then I think my third tip with it is when you figure like I've changed my prices so many times, I'm not like afraid to admit it. But whatever price structure you come up with, don't be afraid of people saying no. In
Mm.
fact, I would say the opposite of like, in not only don't be afraid of it, but like chase the no's. Like go out and collect your no's because that means that you're in action. And my business coach actually inspired me with one of his stories. He got 22 no's in a row. So he had this proposal for this like elite course that he had put together. It was no, 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 all these like huge corporations saying no. The 23rd person said yes, and that was a $55,000 deal. So, like, don't look at no as a rejection. It's not a personal stab. It's not like someone isn't interested in you or your service. It's just like they're not interested right now. Like, moving on, stay in action, get out there, collect your no's, know your value, charge it confidently, collect your no's, people.
I love that. Have you read the book Believe It by Jamie Kern Lima?
No. No.
Oh, you
I'll have to add it to my
must.
list.
Yeah, she founded It Cosmetics, and the book is her story about how she wanted to create this inclusive, clean makeup line, and she was rejected so many times. The entire book is basically a journal of her rejections until she was given a chance. And then like she just sold the company to I think L'Oreal earlier this year. But I mean,
Wow.
she's one of the most inspirational speakers I've ever heard live as well. So I got to hear her speak at a conference earlier this year too. Just the most wonderful human. And her story basically, it's like if you're getting rejected, keep going.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of loaded, right? Like we want to make sure that our product or our services are quality and all of that. But if you stand behind what you do and what you have to offer, collect those no's. That is the best
Yeah.
advice. Yeah.
Yeah. And to add to that, it's even interesting, like in the money coaching world, people are like, how can you charge for that? Like, no one can afford your services. And people are paying thousands of dollars for money coaches because they know that it will get them to where they want to be. Like, they don't have $1,000, but they will literally like go into more debt. It'll be the last thing they put on their credit card. Like if they want it, they'll make it happen. So, yeah, go out there. It's fine if people reject you. Keep moving on.
Yeah. I saw something really interesting the other day. I think it was like in a Facebook group. Somebody asked, how do you, no, what was the question? It was something like, what do you charge per hour for your services? And the comments, there was like hundreds of comments, and people were being snarky, serious, like, the whole gamut, right? Like
Yeah.
like all the trolls in the world were on this post. But someone said something really interesting. They were like, I charge for the transformation that I provide. And I was like,
Yeah.
that makes total sense. And what value does your client put on that transformation? What does that mean to them? And I would say too, like I use fitness all the time as an example because it's just easy for people to sort of wrap their minds around.
Right.
If you want to lose 5 pounds, to someone, paying $5 to a coach to help them lose 5 pounds might be enough to get them to take action. For other people, spending $500 on a coach to help them lose 5 pounds is what they need to actually do the work.
I
So
love that.
like it's literally an energetic exchange based on what you need and what you value. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps anybody or just confuses everybody more.
I love that. Yeah, that's a really solid reminder. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, we're all
Good
just
stuff.
trying to figure it out. So just do
It's
something.
true.
Put a price on it
Yeah.
and put it out there and see what happens.
You can always change it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good. That's great.
Amazing. I feel like we are going to be lifelong friends, and we're going to do many more podcast episodes together because this has really just sparked a lot of ideas and hopefully brought just a lot of hope and like awareness and light to this sometimes dark or taboo topic. And I imagine other people listening to this are as much of a super fan of you as I am. And so I'd love for you to share how they can get in touch with you and how they can, connect with you.
Yeah. So my fax number is I I would love to keep in touch with everyone. My Instagram is Annie J Coaching. So ANNIEJAY Coaching. My website is anniejcoaching.com. And snail mail is always welcome. P.O. Box 7097. I've never shared that. Yeah. If someone writes me a letter, I always respond. So P.O. Box
Oh my gosh,
7097,
amazing.
Kamuela, Hawaii.
Seriously, can somebody please write Annie a letter and mail it and then take a
I
picture of the letter? If anybody does that, like, I'm going to send you something awesome. I'm going to send you a t-shirt or something.
I was on like, it was like a sales training call this morning, and one of her pieces of advice was like, as a follow-up, she literally advised people, she was like, send a fax. You stand out. Like, everyone's sending emails, send a fax. And I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Honestly,
Is
I
that
don't
an
think I would
option?
know how to do that either.
Anyways, snail mail is still a thing, so.
That's hilarious. There's like some state offices here that still require you to fax them documents. I'm like, how does even somebody do that? Like, can you do that online? And the fact that
Yeah.
you have to ask that is insane. Anyway, I was
Yes.
alive when fax
It
machines
was.
were a thing, by the way. Just in case people are like, these kids.
Good stuff. Thank you, Pua, for having me.
Oh my
Wonderful,
goodness.
wonderful
Thank
discussion.
you.
I love your podcast. I love what you're doing. And I'm coming to you because I'm going to be ready to make a course soon. So you're on my mind a lot. Yeah.
Yay. Let's do it. And I'm sure, like, whenever that happens, we can come back on here and share with the world everything about your course. And yeah, that's awesome. I was going to ask, if you don't already have one, people would be knocking down your door to get a course from you. So
I
I'm
need
glad you're
you.
doing that.
Yeah. I need you because it's my next big thing and I haven't really taken a lot of action. So yes, we need to talk
Yay.
outside of the podcast.
Perfect. Or maybe we'll just like record live all of our course brainstorms. No, just
Yes.
kidding.
I'm here for it.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. This was so valuable, literally valuable and worth money. And I really appreciate your time. And yeah, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Pua.